Imagine this, a country's digital dreams, a bank holding the keys to thousands of homes, and a single voice who saw the disaster coming. Let's get into the story of a nation's cyber debt and what happens when it finally comes due.
Okay, first you really need to understand the stakes here. We're not talking about just any bank. Banco Hipotecario del Uruguay, or BHU, is a pillar of the entire nation. It's a state-owned bank, and it's absolutely essential to Uruguay's housing policy. This is where thousands of regular people go to get a mortgage to secure that dream of owning a home.
And then, on what seemed like a totally normal Tuesday night right in the middle of closing out the month's books, that pillar of society just, poof, it vanished from the digital world.
Now, what happened to BHU isn't just a story about one bank getting into trouble. No, it's the latest and maybe the most public symptom of a really deep crisis that's been building for years. To really get it, we've got to look at the official story first.
The official line was, well, it was very carefully phrased. They just called it an IT incident. But for customers, the reality was way more stark. The entire bank network shut down. Their website and email offline. You couldn't even make your mortgage payment at an external kiosk. And maybe the most worrying part, absolutely no timeline for when things might get back to normal. Just silence.
And that gap, the space between the sanitized official story and what was actually happening on the ground, that's exactly where this story gets complicated. And it's where we meet Alberto Daniel Hill, a guy who has been living in that gap for years, trying to warn his country about the very disaster he knew was coming.
So to really understand the chaos of today, we have to go back. We have to look at a prophecy that was completely ignored and the person who was punished for speaking it. So, who is Alberto Daniel Hill? Well, it really depends on who you ask. To the government, he's a criminal, a hacker they put in jail. But if you ask him, he says he's an ethical hacker, a professional whose only goal was to protect his country from exactly this kind of attack. And that conflict, right there, is at the heart of everything that happens next. This timeline lays out a pattern that is, well, it's pretty damning. This crisis did not come out of nowhere. In 2017, Hill gets thrown in jail for doing what ethical hackers are supposed to do, find a security flaw and report it. Fast forward a few years, a major government ministry gets hacked. A month later, Hill goes on national radio with a desperate public warning. And then, nothing. Until the very catastrophe he predicted finally happens.
And look, this wasn't some vague premonition. These were his exact words on the radio. He did not mince them. Our country is wide open, our security is a joke. He was shouting from the rooftops, trying to get anyone at all, to listen.
And this right here just perfectly shows you the disconnect. After that Ministry of Defense hack, the government's official line was basically, don't worry, nothing sensitive was taken. At the same time, Alberto Daniel Hill was literally looking at documents stamped confidential being sold online. He believed the government wasn't just misleading people, he thought they were genuinely clueless about how bad the damage really was.
And that cluelessness, that denial, it led directly to the catastrophe he predicted, a breach so fundamental he actually called it the theft of 30,000 digital souls.
30,000. It's a number that's worth just pausing on for a second. This wasn't a list of emails or passwords. A hacker stole 30,000 national digital identity certificates. This is the very bedrock of digital life and trust in Uruguay.
So why was this so incredibly bad? Okay, let's break it down. In Uruguay, a digital signature from one of these certificates is the same, legally, as you physically signing a document. All of that power is protected by a single password. And the hacker? They stole both, the certificates and their passwords. The consequence is chilling. The attacker now holds a digital master key with the power to legally impersonate 30,000 citizens to sign contracts, open bank accounts, commit fraud, you name it.
The person or group behind this catastrophe called themselves Arugu 1337. It's a very modern kind of threat actor, someone who posts political manifestos about government corruption while at the same time selling all those stolen identities on the dark web for cold, hard cash. It's activism as a cover for profit.
You know, a disaster like this doesn't just happen out of the blue. It was the result of building a digital nation on what Hill calls a foundation of sand, built on old systems, unpatched software, and a culture of just ignoring the risks. And now, the country is being forced to pay its national cyber debt.
And you can literally see that debt piling up right here in this chart. The number of cyber attacks targeting state institutions didn't just rise,
it absolutely exploded. It nearly tripled in a single year. To put that into perspective, the government's infrastructure was getting attacked about every 30 minutes.
And that brings us right back to the bank that went dark. The attack on BHU was not a random event. It was the predictable result, the latest installment payment on a debt that was accumulated over years and years of ambition outpacing defense and of warnings, like Alberto Daniel Hill's, falling on deaf ears. Now, while officials have been really tight-lipped just calling it an IT incident, we can ask a really critical question. What if this was worse? What if this was a full-blown ransomware attack where the bank lost access to everything?
Based on what we see happening globally, scaled to a bank of BHU size, the numbers are just staggering. Operationally, you're looking at $1 to $5 million in immediate costs and potentially months of downtime. Financially, that could balloon to over $27 million in total costs. But the human impact, that's where it really hits home. Tens of thousands of mortgage holders unable to access their accounts, their financial lives just thrown into chaos.
So ultimately, this isn't about one hacker or one piece of bad software. It's about a deep systemic rot. You have a country that raced to go digital without investing in defense. It has a critical shortage of trained cybersecurity professionals, and the jailing of Alberto Daniel Hill, it created a chilling effect. And this is the key takeaway. When you criminalize ethical hacking, you create a nation of silent witnesses, because the laws are so outdated they literally can't tell the difference between someone trying to help and someone trying to cause harm.
And this brings us to the final, really unsettling question that Hill himself posed. We focus this whole story on Uruguay, but as he asks, when ambition gets too far ahead of defense, when warnings are ignored and the people trying to help are punished, isn't every single country that's racing into a digital future at risk of the exact same collapse?